Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 602. Fresh off its world premiere in Sydney is Anno 2020, a multi-narrative, multi-character drama set during the COVID lockdowns of 2020. Shot in 17 cities across 5 countries on 4 continents. Anno 2020 is an example of how creative ingenuity can overcome harsh conditions. And the film also marks the directorial debut of James Morcan, who I'm glad to say is joining me now on the podcast. James, how are you?
I'm very well, Matt. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. As I mentioned before, you had just had the premiere about a month or so ago at the Ritz in Sydney. I know there's more screenings coming up. You want to just let people know where screenings are coming up in Melbourne and Brisbane are happening?
Yeah, sure. So we had the Sydney premiere on April 7, and that was sold out. And then we've got the Melbourne, which is the Victorian premiere, and that's at the Lido Cinema in Hawthorn in Melbourne. Beautiful cinema there. And that's on May 6th. And you can get tickets you could still get tickets. There's a few left at Sticky Tickets is the site. So you'll have the link by the end there. And then on June 4 is the Queensland premiere. So we're going up to Brisbane. And that you can find that via the Sticky Tickets link as well. And at this stage, that's all the cinema screenings we got booked, but we expect to have more.
So for everyone out there, check out the production notes. I'll have the links down there for those screenings, so you can make sure that you can watch Anno 2020 in the cinemas when it hits your town. Because as you said, Sydney was sold out. It was a big triumph there. Melbourne's near to selling out. Brisbane is going to be the same, I'm very sure. Let's go back a little bit though. James, let's talk about Anno 2020, the book. I mean, this is based on a book that you wrote. You're incredibly prolific as a writer. I mean, if you look at your Amazon page, you have so many books you've written with Lance, books you've done on your own, non-fiction stuff, fiction stuff. What was it about Anno 2020, though, that spoke to you as a filmmaker? Because I know you've worked in film as an actor, as a producer, as a writer, but this is you going behind the lens as a director. What was it about that story that really spoke to you that said, this is the one I'm going to take the plunge in and put my director's hat on?
Yeah, well, I would say the main thing was this was something that we were all living through. And I was basically, as a novelist first, I knew that I wanted to do it as a film, but I thought I had too much content, so I wanted to put it into a novel first. And it was really about just processing what I am experiencing, what's going on with the world, how does it change me, how is it changing society. And I thought these brought out great stories, but at the same time, these were all stories that could have been told before 2020. It's not a COVID or a lockdown movie or anything like that, but the situation heightened it. Yeah.
When it comes to the story himself, as you're writing it and you have these multi-narrative, global set kind of story, was the hope that maybe by the time this gets published and is out there and you're ready to make a film, that maybe the lockdowns would have ceased to make this film much better? I mean, did you know that going into making a film that there could be this logistical nightmare of trying to get all these different people on board and doing it via pretty much online, right? I mean, you had different crews in different cities, but you were like directing it from like I imagine your home base that you're at now.
Yeah, I mean, 40% of the movie is in Australia, so we were able to travel around there, whether it was Queensland, Kangaroo Island in South Australia, or here in Sydney. So that was all just traditional shoot and then the rest of it was these locations around the world, whether it was Beijing, whether it was Los Angeles, New York, Milan in Italy, or Israel in the Middle East. So that was really that was expected. Yeah, I was trying to write really fast so that we could capture the zeitgeist of this area, because I think it's really, and looking back now, especially people commented from the Sydney screening that it's unusual footage to actually see. It's like holding a mirror up to what we have experienced and seeing people in masks. Seeing, for example, we got shots where we snuck into Grand Central Station and it's completely empty. And we did that. I mean, some of this is guerrilla style. And we just got into places where we captured these images. That another one would be where we were there and when Black Lives Matter was going down in
Right,
Washington
yeah.
D.C. So we, rather than recreating that, like I think you could give me a 10 million budget now, but I could never recreate it to the same level as having an actor there filming. Do you know what I mean? So some of this was kind of this was my plan all along, and it's really a documentary technique called cinema verite, where
Mm.
instead of recreating the world, you place actors into the world, if that makes sense.
Of course, yeah. Speaking of placing those actors into the world, when you are sourcing different people to like film these scenes in different countries, especially, do you have people in mind already, or was there a lot of groundwork taken by yourself and other guys that are at Monkey Shot Productions to try to find the people necessary to do this? Because not only do you need actors. Not only do you need, people who know how to handle a camera as well, but you're going to
Mm.
need like people who are going to be willing to work in a very kind of different way than they're perhaps used to. Filmmaking is an incredibly intimate thing, especially between filmmaker and actors. There's a lot
Yeah.
of discussion and such. And here we are a lot of times when you're not filming in Australia, when you're talking to people in Beijing or in the US or other places, Israel, you're going to have to talk to them through like, as you're talking to me right now, that would be a new thing for people to be accustomed to. Because, from what even something like Zoom pre COVID was not something that
Yeah.
was necessarily on a lot of people's minds.
Mm. Well, yeah, we had to. I started reaching out to people even when I was writing the novel. There was certain
Right.
actors that I'd been had in mind for a while with different films, but then it was also about finding people that could also. We attracted a lot of people that were like actor producers who would
Mhm.
partner with us, and that's how we got the. Because I will say to your audience here that our budget was $6,000 US for the total thing. That includes
Yeah.
post-production and everything, which is about 9,000 Australian. Um, so, but we managed to shoot in all these cities around the world and get crews in every location and so on by partnering with people. And we found in lockdown that some people had cameras, they had crews and so on, and they wanted to do stuff. So I don't know if I
Yeah.
tried this now, whether I would get the same response. I think they were attracted to that and maybe based on a novel, but I think most likely people just didn't know when they could act again or work again.
Please support Matt's movie reviews on Patreon. Get access to exclusive content, request movie reviews and top 10 lists, and help support my work. Please click on the Patreon link in the description below. When you have people speaking your dialogue, because of course, it's adapted from your book, how open are you for people to improvise, to add their own flair to stuff, or do you like people to stick to the letter of the script?
No, this movie basically evolved a lot from the novel. So I would never want, even though I am a novelist as well, I would never want to do a movie where I'm adapting faithfully to the novel. I really believe this movie proves that things have to evolve during it. So what happened is I got to know the actors and I got to know that the characters are really a combination of the fictional characters I wrote, and it's like an amalgamation with their real lives. So that most
Mm.
of them are autobiographical. So I'll give you one example would be there's an actor in America, Andre Doc Williams, and he had an experience where he was kidnapped as a child. And
Mhm.
he told me this when we were starting to film, and he was actually forced into, for a couple of years of his life as a child, he was forced into child labor. This is in America, quite an unusual scenario. So I asked him, would you be willing to recreate that? And so on. And so then we built that in. So therefore, also because I'm covering so many different cultures here, I think it would be a bit arrogant of me to say, hey, I can write all your dialogue. So it was
Mhm.
actually about allowing them. So 75% of this movie is improvised. But I still think it's important to get stuff down on the page, right? Because that's the foundation where they know what the scene's about. But then we just evolved it so much. So this is one of the most improvised movies around. Yeah.
As someone who talks to a lot of international filmmakers, I know the juggle of time zones, here in Australia and other side of the world. And so when I'm talking with filmmakers or what have you, such, you always have to keep that in mind, what time I can wake up, what time are they ready. In this case, you're dealing with people from all over the globe. I'm
Mm.
just curious, just in that kind of thing, that might seem really simplistic, but it's actually quite difficult to get everyone on a page with time zone stuff because one person might be up really early, another person might be up really late, it might be Ava for you. I think out of all of that kind of stuff, that might be the trickiest kind of to pull off.
Yeah, that was hard logistically. I mean, at times because we had crew who were also tuning into the recording that's going on. And then we had then we had actors in like some scenes we might have actors in 4 different time zones around the world. And I remember there was sometimes I was paranoid. You know, when you work out the time and you work out the time difference, but then I was suddenly in the middle of the night, I'd be going, wait, what if it's the end of daylight savings or something like that? And
Mm,
you know, the level actors we had, we couldn't be, if someone was like, if we missed a day or we had the wrong day or something, that would be it. Like these
mm.
were, I attracted much higher actors than myself at, I knew my level, you know what I mean? As a debut director, I'm not coming in with much, but they were just detractors of the process and so on. But we had to be on point with that. So it was a headache, yeah.
Um, when it came to capturing the snapshot of that time, I think you and I are probably around the same age, and I think there are two pivotal things that happened in our lifetimes, right? I think changed everything globally. 9/11 being one of them,
Yeah.
COVID being the other. And you're capturing a lot of things that are happening in those early times of COVID that we're really seeing like really kind of fester into these big kind of like almost like a wildfire kind of situation. One of them is the whole kind of thing with conspiracy theories. Now, prior to 2020, conspiracy theories were a thing, but they didn't become as big as a thing as they were then to now, right? And a lot of the characters in the film have to, talk about, certain things regarding conspiracies and such, and what essentially it is they bring their own prejudices to the fore.
Mm.
I'm just curious though, capturing that in a film format, in a narrative format as well. How privy were you to a lot of the things that were going on in the world at the time in regards to people just losing their minds over conspiracy theories? Because essentially a lot of it came from a lot of information that was coming out, wasn't reliable, and stuff that did come out changed over time. So people just totally lost trust in a lot of institutional things and just went off in their own kind of worlds. And I think that was a very necessary thing to capture in trying to get where the year of 2020 was back then and how it still has such an impact today.
Yeah, well, I think it's really about just capturing the smorgasbord of opinions and then not judging it and just having, which is something I think we haven't had in our media, where I haven't seen too many characters in movies, TV, and so on, where you're showing, but because I lived through this, I remember you'd go to a barbecue, you'd talk to people on Zoom, you talk to people on the phone, people would be speculating what is going on in all scenarios. And so I just wanted to capture that. And I think through that, then you're capturing. So you've got people who believe in absolute mainstream, trust everything. Then you've got people who believe in nothing. Then you've got people in between.
Mm.
Um, and it's really just, I just like the non-judgmental approach because these were the sort of characters that I was seeing, and this was the world that I was experiencing. And I think most people can relate to that as you see these characters. But through that, you sort of then you're getting the spectrum of the left-right political paradigm as well. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. Absolutely. Another thing that you capture really well in the film that has become incredibly disturbingly proficient these days is anti-Semitism.
Mhm.
Whenever anything big happens with world politics of people, like there's so many people that come out with their own kind of anti-Semitic kind of conspiracy theories and such. And there's a scene in the movie. I think a lot of people have said it's one of the best scenes in the film. I have to agree as well. Where you're in the scene, you're playing this Holocaust denying anti-Semite kind of guy, and Gil Ben Moshe, who plays the character Levi, who's also a producer in the film, confronts him. And I'm just curious though, the monologue that Gil's character have of Levi when he confronts your character, how much of that monologue is inspired by The Merchant of Venice? Because there's a scene, that kind of helps me. There's a scene, it's one of my favorite Shakespeare plays where
Right.
Shylock has this really big kind of
Yeah.
monologue, do you prick us, do we bleed, do you tickle us, don't we laugh? It kind of reminds me of that. Was that inspiration in any way?
No, that's a happy accident. And if anything reminds us of Shakespeare, then it's a happy accident. But no, that's improv. That's his life. So he basically said to me, Gil Beaumarchais is so he's the one of the leading actors and lead producer of the movie. But he basically said to me that he didn't need to study for the scene because he's had 50 years of anti-Semitism as a Jew.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I will just talk that that seems very interesting. I mean, I view that as kind of like this is representative of the movie where they're kind of like short film uh interludes, if you know what I mean. Um,
Mm,
and therefore that's when I think about that scene, it evolved in such a way, or that sequence really, it evolved in such a way where it was born out of he was he was having people as a Jew even saying stuff to him like Jews are responsible for, these are evil conspiracy theories,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
Jews are responsible for what's going on even with the pandemic. So we
yeah.
decided to put that in the movie to show the journey that he's gone through. But then it was also inspired by Holocaust survivors. And so, Holocaust denial. Sorry, have you lost my audio or?
I just for a bit, but I got you back now.
Okay, not sure what's going on with my thing, but anyway, let me know if it drops out again.
All right.
Uh, yeah, I've written a book debunking Holocaust denial theories, so it was
Yeah.
inspired by that. Yeah.
You wrote that book with your grandfather, is that right?
No, my father in combination with Holocaust survivors.
Okay. Very, very interesting. So when Gil is talking about in the movie for his character of Levi about how when he was a kid, people were like, vandalizing his home and he was getting beat up and things like that. Is that based on his real experience as well growing up? Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Yeah. So that was once
Yeah.
again too good to leave. And that was where another example where I didn't want to just stick to the novel, you know what I mean? These were
Yeah.
so these are semi-autobiographical characters. Yeah.
The character that you play in the film, the views are repulsive kind of stuff, but there's something he does say in the film that I think a lot of people can latch onto, which is before he goes on his rant, he's talk about how he likes the old normal, how he wants everything to go back to how it was. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that a lot of people want to have. Like they would love to have nothing more than have everything go back to previous kind of thing. The old normal. It's a really interesting kind of turn of phrase. I guess it's kind of like in a sort of ways like you're thinking like the good old days in a certain way, right? It's like prior to all that stuff. And I'm just curious for yourself when it comes to the old normal. Um, do you think that this movie could have been made in the old normal in any kind of shape or way if you wanted to adapt Anno 2020 and you didn't have the on one hand you wouldn't have the logistical nightmare of putting them together, but on the other hand would have been be able to put together without that logistical nightmare because it's kind of interesting how kind of one plays into the other.
Yeah, well, I can answer that with a bit of an experience where we did film some scenes quite late in post-production. And when I told my DOP and editor, Simon Carter, I said, look, I'm nervous about this because even the way I'm directing, I wasn't feeling the same. And I
Mm,
think the spirit had gone. We were then trying to recreate the past, and it just didn't have the same. Whereas when we were living it, so we started filming this. It's about the year 2020. We started filming in January 9, 2021. So virtually 2020, but there was still lockdowns all over the world. So therefore, we had that chaos and we had that confusion that we were living through, and I think the actors expressed that. But it also, as I said, most of the stuff in this movie is nothing to do with 2020 in a way. In many
mm.
ways, it's really about the human experience in different ways. But I think we were feeling heightened emotions because of what we were living through, so that helped the performances and everything. Yeah.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Yeah, well, a lot of times external environment factors can affect human emotions, right? So, especially during those times, everything is just so very contained and tense, almost like a pressure cooker situation.
That's something I'm thinking about, like for future movies that I can hopefully direct, is to take people into a place where we can. I think it's important where we film. Like you could go to somewhere like Hawaii and have a good time, but then if you're doing an intense drama, would that? So I'm starting to think about that. I don't know the answer to it, but
The film has been described as kind of like a kaleidoscope drama, and the editing really represents that because you got all these different kind of stories going on, different plot points and such. When it comes to editing the film, and you get all this footage from everyone, and you get it, and Simon Carter's your editor. What was it like planning and editing the film? Are you following with the structure of the book, or are you looking at it as kind of like a new kind of puzzle that you want to put together?
yeah, an absolutely new thing. I mean, we ended up with after we'd been editing for a while. I said, "How long's the movie?" So
Hmm.
we made a lot of cuts already. It was 8.5 hours. Now that was because
Wow.
we decided. I'm very inspired by various documentary filmmakers, and there is a bit of a docudrama feel to this film, I believe, or I'm told. But the thing is, it was about really. capturing as much as we could and then deciding where. So it was really retail. It just evolved so much beyond the book. But it was interesting. I always planned in the writing for it. When I started to do a screenplay adaptation, I planned for 2 hours 30. I thought it has to be reasonably epic for to capture the zeitgeist. And there's a lot of things going on. And in the end, it was 2 hours 25. So some people might be thinking that, oh, this grew into an epic beast and you didn't cut it down. But it was always something like that. And I think when you look at movies like, say, Nashville or JFK by Oliver Stone, those sort of movies they have to be fairly long to capture that all the things going on in the world, you know?
Any plans of taking that extra footage and doing something series-wise with it, expanding it, or are you just going to leave it as is and move on?
Yeah, definitely leave it as is. Every cut I made, I'm 100% happy with, and there's not one bit of footage that I'd want back. Yeah.
So 2021, Jan 21, started filming it. April this year, you had to premiere at Sydney. And not only that, premiere in a cinema. You know, having a cinema release, even a small one, like yours, where they're like the exhibition screenings and such, isn't a given, especially for independent films, and especially for independent filmers, like $9,000, costs like $9,000 Australian, right? So, what was it like showing a movie to an audience for the first time? You know, you got this crowd, you got this movie been working with, directorial debut, you got some of your cast there, you got your producers there. It might have been quite an experience for you.
Yeah, I mean, originally when we started this, we didn't know whether this could actually play. I mean, no one's ever shot a film like this with this much, virtual recordings and so on, and remote shooting. So to play that in the cinema, we had to do a lot of testing and work it out, and then we had to adjust from there as well. But so it was pretty amazing, just such a humble production against all odds. And even there's no given. I told the actors this when they joined. I was really honest that there's no given that we would even finish a movie like this. I mean, we're doing it on the smell of an oily rag, and then to be sitting in there in a full audience and have people, and actually people were talking to the screen. People were quite vocal, like,
Mm.
and so it was mind blowing. I would describe it as, and it's a major thing for a director to go through. I think seeing people reacting to your film in different ways. Yeah.
So for everyone out there listening, if you want to experience Anno 2020 yourself, there are screenings coming up. We've got one in Melbourne, May 6th. Is that correct?
That's great.
And then Brisbane later on. I'm going to have the links in my production notes for sticky tickets, so you can go get those links, get your tickets, check out this film, support Australian indie filmmakers. And yeah, James Morcan, I've got to say thank you very much for your time today, and congratulations in pulling off what I think has been quite an incredible feat. I mean, logistically and everything else that you're able to do here with you and your producers and your cast and crew from all around the world. I think it's been a real kind of like experience for yourself for sure, especially to have a directorial debut in that way. I think yeah, you went through a lot of different fires and jumped through a lot of jumped over a lot of hurdles to try to get something like this made. So I'm sure it's something that's made you stronger as a filmmaker and a storyteller as well.
Yeah, you're 100% right in everything you say, and thank you for supporting Australian films.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.